I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman, Chairman of the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee. The American Fire Service is rich in tradition and culture. A firefighter's life is filled with many emotional highs and lows. Stories of major fires, national disasters, medical calls, firehouse living, and family life are often verbally shared from one generation to another. Many times these stories are lost forever when a firefighter passes away. In an effort to preserve these stories, in 2019, the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee launched a new program of recording audio-video of our retirees' lives. These stories will be shared on our website, gfhbc.org. In 2020, we did not record because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please listen as these firefighters share their life experiences with all of us.
Okay, my name is Danny Shumate. I'm 70 years old. I come on the fire department in 1972 and retired in 2009. I had 37 years of actual service and 1 year sick time, so I had 38 years of service, and I retired as deputy chief. I was born in Whitfield, Virginia, but been in Greensboro, North Carolina since about the 4th grade, so I consider myself being from Greensboro most of my life, yes. I have a son that's been on almost 20 years, Brad Shumate. I had a sister-in-law, Edie Bailey, who retired now, and nephew Rich Simmons, June's sister's boy, that I think recently retired too, but no, beforehand, no members at all. Before I come on the fire department, well, I graduated right out of high school in '69 and went into Marine Corps Reserves in October of that year. And when I come back from service, I spent 6 months active duty and got married the following September to June, and in September of '70, and worked a few odd jobs when I got back, but I guess the most recent job before I come on the fire department was E.F. Craven Company. They worked on heavy bulldozers and cranes and things. I worked in the office taking care of timesheets and job files when the mechanics worked on different equipment and everything. And I worked there for about 2 years, I think, before I come on in '72. What made me become a firefighter? To be honest with you, most of my life I hadn't paid much attention to the fire department or firemen. I had a friend of mine who got killed in Vietnam that eventually he was going with a girl, but eventually married T.B. Henderson, Chief Henderson, that used to be here in the fire department. And he had always talked about, let's go on the fire department, we need to go on the fire department. And of course, like I say, I went on to work some odd jobs. He went on in service. He was a little bit younger than me. And I just decided one day I didn't like working inside. I was going to try to look for a different job, something with a career. And the fire department just kind of come to mind his conversation over the years, and went and applied. Well, the process when I come on the fire department was nowhere near what it is today, by no stretch of the imagination. I think I had a short interview with Chief Powell uptown, and then if memory serves me correct, I went and took like a little civil service test, turning screws and putting different things like that, and looked at a few questions, and then the Chief Kent training officer, they would run us out to the drill tower, and we'd have to, I think we took the Pompier ladder out and stuck it in one window. They didn't let us climb it, but just to, I guess, to look at our strength. We had to hold ourselves on a rope, come back, I think we had to run back to the classroom area and do a couple of push-ups, or as many as we could do, and sit-ups. And then we had a physical, and that was pretty much it. That was the process. Starting salary then was $553 a month. Divide that by 2. 200 some dollars a payday. Yeah, our class consisted, if I'm not wrong, about 22 people. The class actually started in January, I think January of 73, but we were hired, most of us was hired through the year of 72. Of that 22, probably half of us had been hired at different times. They would hire like 2 people. I know me and Rick Schuler was hired in September of 72, and we worked out at the garage and training center. We would sweep the garage or clean the bathrooms and wash the coffee cups and do those type things until they hired 2 more people. And then Rick and I actually, after a couple months, actually went out and rode at a company until the training class started. I think there was several groups had done that before us. I think, yeah, Charlie Jones was in my class, Carl Eller, Danny Underwood, Jerry Price, Larry Coble, Robert Graves, Steve Fowler. Good gracious, don't want to forget Steve. Steve used to come over and spend the weekend with me and nights so he could study and do, and instead of going back home, especially during the winter months and things. Well, I think just being hired to begin was a challenge. I think most of us took a by the hour cut coming, and we always was told that you had 6 months and you might not have a job. Number one, you might not get out of training, and you might not have a job after 6 months. So I think that was always in the back of your mind. It was a challenge to always do good. You know, when I was in high school, I wasn't really academically gifted. I didn't. It was my own fault. I didn't really care for school, and you know, you were always taught by parents, I just want you out of school and get married and get a job. And so I didn't really study for no more reason other than to get out of high school. So challenged, it was a challenge for me to study. Hydraulics was a big deal. Not being familiar with the fire service, most of the subject matter was Greek. And so I really had to dig into it and really study hard to get through. But you know, we had a group of us that looked after each other. We studied together. We studied before the test. In fact, my wife, even before the study groups, my wife probably could have took the recruit test at the end of the 9 weeks and done as well as I could. She could have took each one of those tests because she just continues to drill me. So the challenge, the biggest challenge was to study. But you know, it was something I liked. It was something I enjoyed. It was different to me, and I could see that it was going to be something I enjoyed. So I realized then that in order to be good at something, you have to like it, and so that was my challenge. Well, as I just said, I felt that this job was going to be special. It was special already in training because it was different. It was learning. It was a new learning curve for me, things that I wasn't familiar with, and certainly after getting out, just the daily, every day, the challenge. Going to work was every call was different, every day was different. So it just I loved it. I loved it, and I loved it till the day I left because I just it was a good job. It was good to me and my family. Well, as I said, I left training center before they started a group, before they started a full training class. My first assignment was Station 8. Just went out there and rode until the training class started. So I rode 2 or 3 months out there at Station 8. And the neat thing there was I had Chief Coble, Jack Coble was my first captain, and Joe Rainkamp was the driver, and Harold Tatum, and then I was the rookie. And between that group, I had Chief Coble was a great officer, great fireground officer, and Barnett taught me everything I needed to know before I went to training. He had went through every bit of what we were going to go over. He tested me. And the last thing he told me before I left is keep your mouth shut. Act like you don't know anything, and just don't try to act like you got it all together. So for me, he helped me tremendously there, and I went back to 8. after that. After I come out of training, I went back to 8 for a short period of time until I was transferred at that point. Jack was, he was fireman. I mean, he was a fireman's officer. I mean, he expected you to do your job, but at the same time, he wasn't no nonsense, but he wanted you to succeed. He was good on the fire ground, and he protected. I know the first call, the first actual fire, he said, you stay put. I don't need you. That was before I went into training, that I was riding with him, and he said, you don't need to go in. You just stay right here, and we'll get you in eventually. And I mean, he was protective, but then later on, working for him, and he was a good mentor. Some of the pranks that I recall that was really, well, you know, I can't tell on somebody else until I tell on myself. And I can remember after I left Station 8, they opened up 12 and 14, and so I was assigned to Station 7. And I was over with Kyle Stewart and Paul Brown and Danny Nelson and myself, and I got Rookie of the Year that year. And unbeknownst to me, Kyle had called up Station 1, and some of his, because Kyle was from Station 1, Danny was from Station 9, I was from Station 7, and I take it back. At that time, I didn't have Paul, I don't think. I think it was Captain Duncan, but he was from 4. And Kyle called up Station 1 and had, I think it was Roger Collis. I never really knew who it was, but over the years I figured it out. I think it was Roger Collis. And called and acted like he was a reporter, and wanted to come that night at supper and take a picture and get a story about me getting Rookie of the Year. And it sounded legit to me, being a young rookie and everything. So I got off the phone and I went and told Chief Hare. I said, Chief Hare, I said, because Chief Hare was stationed there, and he was no nonsense. And he'd go out and play horseshoes with you and do stuff like that, but he didn't get into the jokes and the carrying on. And so I went to him and I said, they told me to come to you and tell you that the reporter's coming out here tonight, and should I wear a dress uniform or just stay in my work uniform? And he had knew about it, but he wasn't letting on that he knew about it because he didn't want to be involved in it. But he said, well, most of the time when you're in the paper or doing interviews and things, you wear a dress uniform. He said, but you do what you feel comfortable with. So I went over about 7 o'clock at night and put on at supper and put on my dress uniform, and come walking across the kitchen there, and I come open at Station 7, I opened the kitchen door off the apparatus floor, and they had made a pasteboard box out of a shoe box, and it had a big fish on it, and it said, "Smile at the fish." And so it got me pretty good then. So, you know, that was my first prank, and not the last that I had played on me, but that's the one that being young. But another one I can tell you about, that was with Kyle. And I know most of the time back in our day, when you would lay anything on the refrigerator, it got thrown in the freezer. If it was car keys, if it was your tie or your hat, it got thrown in the freezer. Well, Danny Nelson had come in and laid his hat on the refrigerator. And so Kyle got this idea of, let's freeze his hat. He said, he went over and he got some plastic bag, and he put the plastic bag in that hat, and we filled it up with water, and we stuck that thing in the freezer. Well, Kyle was always getting on everybody like that, just like he'd done me. So we went and told Danny, and Danny went and switched hats. He went and got Kyle's hat out, put the plastic in there, put plastic in there, put the water in there, put it in the refrigerator, and then got his hat out. So it was Kyle's hat sitting. So all day long, all day and all night, Kyle said, "Man, we're gonna get him." In the morning when he puts that, he goes looking for his hat. And Kyle would laugh and talk about it just all day, and we'd say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna get him," you know. So Kyle and I get up early every morning. I still get up early, and Kyle, we were sitting there, and Kyle had a routine, and when he would come in there, when he was finishing up, he would be sitting there and he'd get everything in, and he'd reach in that to get his hat to walk over in the kitchen. Well, I was sitting there, I was ready, I was about ready to go in, but I was going to watch. And he sat there and he reached in there and he knew, he didn't, nobody had to tell him, nobody had to say nothing. He knew he had been had. He come over in that kitchen, he grabbed that hat out of there, he got a butcher knife and he started stabbing and doing, he was upset, but the whole time we used to laugh and talk to him about, you filled your own hat with water, you got your own trick. But there's a lot of things that went on, but just not. Well, my wife would tell you that the value is that I'm able to cook now because I still cook a lot, and so I like to cook. Not for a group like that anymore, but I learned to cook. I actually learned some good things, and I think that the value of it is that we just like. Well, you learn. I mean, as a rookie, I couldn't cook when I went in, and that's really the only time. I mean, we would sit there, and that's a downtime to sit and talk to each other, talk about things, and reminisce about the war stories and fires we had, and what you doing for the weekend. So there's all kind of value in it. Well. Close enough that if somebody would knock over a drink, everybody else would turn their drink over on the table. I mean, but yes, I mean it's just working on a company, working in the fire station, anything you do. If we were sweeping the apparatus floor at 7, I think that's the thing about being a team. That you do everything together. If we were on the apparatus floor, we was always together. At lunchtime. Supper time, you knew you were going to be together, whether you liked what was being fixed or didn't like what you. I mean, I've had guys that counted in and they'd say, pick me up a pound of hamburger while you. I mean, some people and they'd fix their own thing, but they would sit there and eat with you. So there's value because you're together. I think I wound up being a fairly decent cook. I wasn't a good cook when I started, for sure. There wasn't much I could do, but yeah, I wound up, I got, 8 or 9, 10 dishes that I could fix that I still cook now. Ain't much cooking to it, but my favorite meal is a cheeseburger. Everybody knows me knows that, but a cheeseburger, I could fix you a cheeseburger, but I can do meatloaf, I can do barbecue chicken, I can do spaghetti, chili beans, things like that. But where it come from was watching other people, helping other people. There's things now that I still go back in old cookbooks that the softball team and Barnett and them used to sell and things. I go back and look at some of his meals and things he put in there, and there was people that, I mean, he was the lasagna man. I never could do his lasagna, but I picked up on a lot of things that was pretty good. The worst meal I ever ate, I still went ahead and eat it, but it was 2 worst meals. I just hit another one. One of the worst meals I ever ate was I was invited to a station and the guy didn't finish the deer roast. The deer roast was rotten, and now I eat no more deer anymore because when we cut into that thing, it was horrible. That was one that just come to mind. That was probably the worst. But I was thinking about when I was over at 7 that individual tried fixing the grab bags. I don't know if you ever fixed grab bags, but it's cube steak and potatoes together and onions and carrots, and he had overcooked it, and that was another one of them. Kyle just took and threw it in the trash can, didn't say much about it, but that was probably the worst meal we had as far as on the company. But I was invited as a chief officer to this station, and I don't eat deer meat at all no more because of that. If you've ever cut into a roast, now Kyle could fix a deer meat that you couldn't even taste like just roast, and I was expecting that same thing, I guess, and that was horrible. But that's the worst. When I come on, we had to open dorm. It was a lot went on at nighttime in there that was good. A lot of, I mean, you again, it's just like at the table. You talked about things at night. You talked about, a lot of it has to do with who you're with. I know working over there with Kyle Stewart and them, you believe it or not, territory was a big thing. He was the driver, and territory was a big thing. at nighttime he'd lay there and he'd have him cards and he'd call out streets at nighttime laying there. So it was a time of fun and relaxation in there, but it was a time also he could sit there and ask you questions and do. A lot of pranks played at nighttime in there. You were together, so but I'll be honest with you, I see it both ways. When I made officer, I was glad to have my own room. If I had to come on like some of the guys are nowadays and girls, I would probably like the room. It probably takes away, but I think again it goes back to just like with Kyle and some of the officers I had. I think it's up to the company officer to still bring that closeness together at different times. It doesn't have to be when you're ready to go to bed and sleep. I don't think you should allow a guy to just go in there and stay in that room during the day. I don't think it's good for the team, but at the same time, it'd be nice to go in there and be able to go to sleep and not be kept awake by some prank or just somebody snoring or just the roughness that goes in the dorm. So there's advantages to both. When we started building them, I was a deputy chief over that when we started building them, and I think they've worked through a lot of the things of distance, trying to get from one place to the other to the apparatus. So I see advantages and disadvantages to both. I think there's some closeness that certainly you miss. But at the same time, the way they ride and what they do now, they're probably getting a lot more sleep and rest than what they. And there's a lot of guys now go to school. They need time to sit somewhere and do some of the stuff. They got part-time jobs. They got families, and so it's the times that we had. Sometimes it was just time fillers that we were still pulling pranks and talking and staying up watching TV and things. So I see advantages of both. When a retired firefighter comes in the station or comes to visit, some of the retirees I didn't know. And so it was good to know them. It was good to hear some of the stories they had. I think it's a good thing for the person or the people at the station to spend some time with him, because I know when we had them come by, some I didn't know, some I didn't actually work with. I can remember one incident over Station 8 that Captain Hart's had come by, but before he had come by, we were loading up we had been reloading Engine 8, and we had the baling hook out there pulling them even the layers. It really had a nice, I was taught that. I mean, I was taught as a rookie all the way as a captain over at station. Your hose bed pretty much dictated what type of company you ran and what company, how much pride you had in your company. And I was telling these guys, they're like, why are you concerned about that? I said, well, it tells who you are. It tells the pride and how much you care about it. Well, that evening, Will Hart's had come in the back door back there visiting the station. And as soon as he walked in, he said, man, look at that hose load. Man, that tells me a lot about you guys right there. And I said, you answered everything. And so you get to talking to him, and he started telling them the same thing. So I think there's a lot to learn from retirees. I would like to think that I still have a lot to offer in conversation that maybe they would pick up. I enjoyed the stories. I enjoyed learning from them. We had a lot of fires. Those guys had a lot of fires. They had a lot of things going on in their life, and just some of the things about things they'd done, the fishing clubs, the cars they had, the things that we just read about now that they actually live. So for me, I think I would like to think, and I think they do. We did, and I would assume that if I went, I haven't been in too many stations, lately, but I dare say once you're a fireman, that closeness is there. I think it's important, and I think they would do that. I would hope they would. Well, I think the past administrations have done made the retirees feel better than, say, when I think it probably started a little bit with Johnny, with Chief Teeters, but no fault of nobody else. It really, once you left, you just didn't feel a part of the department no more. And when they started coming to the retiree breakfast and doing those things, that means a lot. And bringing the companies out there and getting to meet some of the new guys and those type things. So I think a lot of it is, it's evolving. And what you're getting ready to talk about that's for the future that's out here for retirees and working with and meeting some of the new guys, it's evolving, and I think it's important. Do I see any value to what you're doing with this program you're doing? Absolutely. I think it's one of the first, one of the first programs that's just geared towards retirees. Be honest with you, I'd like to hear some of the same stories from some of the present firefighters. I think it'd be very interesting. But I think for me, the value is personal too. I think I was thinking about on the way out here how it's made me think and kind of dig deep into my past. Being in the military years ago when I first out of high school, I don't recall that very much. I don't think about that very much anymore. And after being gone 12 years, you kind of get the same way. You don't think too much unless you see a fire truck or Brad, my son, mentioned something that's going on or something. You don't think too much about you being on the fire department. And this program has caused me to really reach back and really think about some good memories. I love this fire department. I loved it. I still love it today. And just caused me to really go back and laugh at things, think about people that's been in my past I hadn't thought about in a long time, and really how I evolved. I mean, and I know you're going to talk about that, but just it's caused me to really think about people that helped me make my career and help my family and help me to just be the person that I am. So I appreciate what you're doing here, and I hope it continues. And like I say, I'd like to see it even involve people in the department. But when riding squads, I know riding squad 1 that's out of Station 5, first 5 days, not the first 5, but in a 5-day period, we lost 7 people in 1 week, just CPR and accidents and things like that. And it starts to, because of you're thinking that you're supposed to be doing something good, and you have in your mind that you're going to save everybody that goes out there, but no. But I was nothing that really. I mean, we've all had the things. I remember a kid that playing a firecracker blowed his finger off, and back over here on the north side of town, and we got there, they'd done loaded him up, but they called back wanting us to try to find the finger to take in, and we did, and put in saline water in a bag and took it in. And I can remember a guy out here on the West Ridge under a car jack fell off, and it fell and got him. But I can remember, I can't think of the guy's name, the big old guy on EMS that he took the hearse tool with one hand and just run that thing down there with one hand. I mean, it was that. I mean, your adrenaline's going and doing that. But that's run so many of them, Larry, that you just become every day. You deal with it the way you deal with it. I can remember I was listening to Larry Coble talk about the first call that we rode, because it was me and him and Kimmel rode the squad, and he was talking about the guy that killed himself in the car, gassed himself to death in the garage, and he was talking about that he reached through the window and jumped back, and because it shocked him, first dead person he'd ever really touched like that. But he didn't go on and tell the story. The way we really dealt with it was when we got him to the morgue, got him to the hospital. It was the first time we'd really dealt with anything that way, and so we were learning it was going. And I'll never forget, the guy pulled a paper out of his pocket, and he said, "Well, here's why he killed himself." He said, "Look what he paid for that car he was sitting in." So you sit there, and being a young guy on the squad, you're thinking everything's supposed to really be serious, but that's the way we dealt with it. You dealt with death in a way that seemed probably gross or gruesome to other people out there, but you kind of laughed it off. But that was when Larry was telling his story there, I said there was more to that story, because that was our first and we learned a lot right there that you just, you know, how to deal with things and how to not wear it on your shoulder, I guess. When we was on the squad, well, I think Larry and I was on this. We run a tanker fire out off of Edwardia Drive. I remember that, and we went out there on a wreck. Is what we went on. It was a guy running the intersection there and put a car up off a window over there. Put the car up against a sign, and so we had run that as a medical call and a wreck, and we were sitting down there with hose line off, with waiting till they pull the car out from the sign, and we heard a just big explosion. Looked across the woods over there, and just a tanker truck had been coming down the hill on Edwardia and turned around in the restaurant, and because of the road being blocked, and when he did, he knocked the transformer down hit the telephone pole, knocked the transformer down, started a fire. And so Larry and I got everything up, got the squad, and called and told them we needed a first alarm. We didn't know what was burning, but we could see something over across the woods burning. And so when we turned the corner there, we seen that tanker sitting up there about, I don't know, 50 yards or something like that, burning. And at that time it was just burning. And so we told them, so you need to send a second, third alarm, and start trying to direct them. So we said we was going to take the booster line off, I mean the 1.5 inches off, and foam down the ditch, because it was starting to run down the ditch. I mean, it was still 50 yards, but it was running down the ditch. We was going to foam that down. Well, about the time we pulled that off, another side of the tank melted down, and that gas just come down the road at the squad. And so I can remember we throwed the hose line down, and I got in there trying to back it up, and Larry throwed it down, and we ripped that hose line off the port. But we got the truck out of there. But I'll never forget, the chief thought we were trying to fight that fire with that squad. He thought we'd went into that tanker, and we had to explain that one, what we were trying to do. But that was the first one we had that really any magnitude with that squad. And then I can remember with Captain Faust. I remember being, we were assigned to Truck 5. I remember being on some apartments over here, about a 2-alarm apartment fire on top of the building, and just about got trapped up there. We were up there trying to cut a hole, and I remember Captain Faust said it's time to get off now. And when we got off, it was already coming, leaping out the windows out there as we went down and come off the ladder. And so that was some of the ones just as a firefighter. And then, of course, as a battalion chief, I had an A1 rental. That was a pretty big fire one Sunday morning. And that's when I had Chuck Smith got burnt and got trapped upstairs and everything. And I recall that one, and really that at the same time he got trapped when the roof come in, because I had a flashover. And I had just pulled Captain Church and his crew off the roof. They probably hadn't no sooner got off the roof than that went in. And then we still had him trapped up in there for a little while. And so I can remember that one, because I remember I had just read in fire engineering, I was reading a story about a fire where some guys had got trapped in there and got killed, and that they had found them a couple of days later. And I'll never forget, I was sitting out there, even in command, your mind's going 1,000 miles a minute, but I was sitting there wondering where we'll find them if we don't get them out of here, because it was burning. And Chuck and them's radio had gone bad, and he took his glove off to try to get it working at about halfway down, and it burned his hand pretty bad. So that one. And then of course I was fortunate or unfortunate. I like being where I had a lot of fires. I had a lot of fires as a firefighter on the rescue and Engine 7 and 8, but as a battalion chief I had a lot of fires. Well, I was getting ready to tell you, I had a lot of fires, a lot of big fires, but Davey Street was my biggest fire in '85. That one kind of caught us all by surprise, I think. I'll never forget, me and Bob McLean had worked a rock show at the Coliseum the night before. We had stayed up all night. We'd been up all night and seen the sun come up. And so we went into work and worked that day, and I was battalion chief, and he was a driver on engine. And so I told him that evening at supper, I said, Bob, why don't you just ride with me tonight? And well, you can take a break, give them guys a chance to drive. Probably you won't go out with me. I said, I won't be going out, and then you can get some sleep. And about the time that come in, about 11 o'clock at night, we come down there, and I can never forget Bob looking at it. He was getting ready to get in the driver's seat, and he looked across the car, and he said, really? And I said, 15 minutes. I said, probably false alarm, 15 minutes, we'll be back. Don't worry about it, we'll be back. And so about the time we crossed Wendover, Captain Ball said we got heavy black smoke showing from a Dixie Bell building. And Bob looked at me across there. And I said, Bob, 2 hours. 2 hours, we'll be back. Don't worry about it. I said, you'd have been here anyway. I said, so don't worry about it. Well, needless to say, we didn't go back, and nor did some other people for a couple of days. It burnt, but yeah, we had I think it was 8 buildings that burnt. We got there. It was showing from the second floor. They had tried to make an attack up the stairwell, or kind of an open stairwell, and it couldn't. Evidently been burning for a long time, and they're closed up, and it had broke through a door into another building unbeknownst to us. And you could see we put the ladders up and decided to pull everybody out, and started to make a defensive attack, and put the ladder up through the window, and a couple of ladders in the window. And I'll never forget Chris Bowman. He was a rookie. And I told him to go up on that ladder, take a 2.5, get up on that ladder and get in that window over there, and had the ladder truck up. And I walked back by, and a few minutes later, and he was down at the bottom of the ladder. He was down. I said, what are you doing? He said, it's hot up there. I said, it done melted. I didn't know it, but it done melted the tip of the nozzle. I said, get back up there on that ladder. Let's get this thing out. But it wasn't long. We had to call him. We moved it because we had we was really getting out of hand, and so we called them, told them to back away. We were going to try to make a defensive move somewhere else, and it had a flashover. I mean, a backdraft. You could see it coming, and so we were getting them out and getting them away. And just as they'd gotten the ladder out and the ladders down, I don't even think they'd put them all the way down. We had a backdraft, and that's when we had people laying on the street. The trucks were incapacitated. I mean, we had engine 4. They had fire stuff had come down in the bed where they'd opened it up. In the bed, I think the tarps and things were burning inside of it. All the hose lines, the first, second alarm lines were just about incapacitated. I mean, and it was across the street. You had open timber where they had framed out all the rooms. So that's now presently condos. But at that time, they were just open frame all the way east to west. And when that happened, it started jumping the street. You could still start seeing the flames start to go. So we were trying to had this a third alarm, fourth alarm coming to third alarm was relaying all the lines. And they were trying to get 2.5s up to the building to stop it from coming. And they couldn't get up there. By the time it done cut, and then I watched the film a little later, and that somebody had taken and put together. I think Harold may even have that tape, but you look at it time, and every time the camera would come back to a window, it would come to another window. It went across that building in 7 minutes in that open timber. So that's how quick it went. But thank God we didn't have anybody really hurt bad. We had a few that was injured, but Captain Sawyer was, had good firefighters there. Willie John had some great officers. Cliff Oakley, Warren Ritter was on one sector. I think Cliff was in another. We stopped it. I think Chief Powell and all of us thought we probably was going to burn it all the way down the street, but we just wrote it off. I mean, wrote it off, moved to another place to start trying to stop it. Had we not done that, we wouldn't have stopped it. But that was the biggest that I was on, probably the biggest we've had. But I remember that. I still got the tape, and when the beeper goes off and it dispatches, it still puts cold chills when you listen to that there. But we did have answered the Daily News fire off the rescue. I'd forgotten about that one. We had rode, in fact, a lady with the Daily News was riding with us, and that was, you know, there wasn't many, I don't know if you'd call it just cocky or self-confidence or just loved it and was too crazy, but I never really worried. I eat it up. I loved it as a firefighter. I loved being in command of it. I was lucky enough to always have great officers that made it look easy because they worked hard and they done good, but that was the only fire that I can remember that I was scared and worried, and it happened. And it really wasn't that much fire to it. But yeah, it was printing press went 2 or 3 floors up through and you had catwalks around it, but I'd never been in it, didn't know it. And when we went in, we crawled in like we always do, on the left of the wall, me and Cole and McIntyre and, there's several other people behind us, but something happened, and electricity, I can remember somebody hit a wire or something happened, and anyway, we needed to get some more hose or something. Anyway, Joey turned around, and Joey started back, and Captain Burns was somewhere around there. Anyway, Captain Burns wound up about a floor down. Joey turned around and evidently any of us would have happened because we didn't know we was on that. We really didn't know we was on that edge. It was so black and thick ink. But when he turned, he evidently flipped over and went down, and they was hollering. And you could see fire down there. It was the ink burning, but you didn't know. I mean, you could see red glow and black, and you hear them hollering and screaming. And so we crawled back and had somebody bring us a ladder and put it down. And I can remember my mind going down there. We're all going to die right here. We're going down in here, and we're all going to die. There's probably other times I was a little bit more worried about things. I certainly was always worried about my men and their health and welfare. But for me, myself, that was the time, and it really was really insignificant for us, the fire probably. But I can remember going down in that deep hole thinking, this is crazy. So, you sit and see how guys get killed because you do what you shouldn't be doing, or in your mind's telling you not to do anyway. But yeah, I don't, it's funny because you have a lot worse fires and you go into a lot worse places probably, but I don't know, just that day, I guess, like you say, the looks of it, we watched it all the way from Station 5, the black smoke, and when you get there you see it, and you can't see anything when you're going in, and for us to go down into that fire and them down there hollering, I guess that horror. I can remember a medical call at Station 7 done the same thing to my body. We'd laid down that night, and I was driving Engine 7, and this car come up Wendover Avenue and lost it, and went through the median and flipped several times over, and you could hear somebody was coming down the street hollering and screaming because of the wreck, and woke us up about the time the beeper hit. And I don't know if you ever had one or not, but I got in that engine, and you couldn't stop it, you couldn't control it, but and it really wasn't anything to the call, I mean, other than metal, but because of that screaming and because the call coming in, you think it really must be bad. And my driving, I couldn't call it the jumpy leg, and I had that thing. And I guess that's what happened at the Daily News. You'd built yourself up, and then hearing them holler, and then you're going down in there. But yeah, I'd always been in worse situations, but that was a scary one that time there. Yeah, my mentors started from day one. I mean, you sit and you look at, I mentioned Donnie Barnett a while ago. He was just a fireman at that time. He wound up retiring as a captain, but Donnie prepared me very well for recruit training, and Chief Cole. I mean, I always think about it. And I even think about most of the men there, but I think about Kyle Stewart. Kyle Stewart, he expected you to do your job. If you're going, back then the drivers didn't let you drive. You didn't touch that truck. I mean, the driver was the driver when I come on. And if he was out, the second driver drove. And he very seldom got to drive. Well, when we went over there to Station 7, Kyle rotated. We rotated every call. And the only way you could drive is if you learned your territory. He wasn't gonna let you up there if you didn't do it. So when we would sweep, when we'd lay there at night, when we was eating, you talk about bonding at the table, he always had them cards. So we made cards, so we'd know. And I learned my streets, and so I learned to drive every third call, and he'd do the same thing with you riding shotgun. And I'd only been on 3.5 years, and you didn't do that as a young fireman. You didn't drive the truck, you didn't ride shotgun. But Kyle would rotate you around. He'd ride the back, and Danny'd move over to the captain's seat, and I'd move up to the drivers when the captain was out, and he'd done it. So he taught me so much right there. In 3.5 years, I wrote a letter to be driver, and that was unheard. They told me, said, you don't write a letter to be a driver. They'll come and tell you when they want you to be a driver. I said, well, how they know? And sure enough, I got to be a driver out there on Truck 3, out there at Station 9, and it was because of Kyle. If I'd have been somewhere else different, I'll tell you another thing about Kyle. I was assistant chief, maybe a battalion chief. But I walked out back with him one day, and we were just talking. I was a battalion chief, I think. And he says, he was a captain up there. And he said, well, buddy, he said, I put 3 kids through school, and I don't know a dime. And I'm like, you don't know a dime? What are you talking about? He said, I paid for it. They're not in debt. They ain't gonna have to pay for it. Their schooling's done. He said, I made that a goal, and I don't owe anything, and they don't owe anything. And so it just kind of went on from there. But I thought about that. So when my kids started school, and I didn't have it to pay it all like that, but I paid for it. And June would tell me once in a while, hey, wouldn't it be easier if we just took a loan, or why don't we do this? But sometimes it was getting close to be able to make that payment, but I paid for Brad to be at UNCG and Christy to be at Tennessee, and they don't know a dime, and I don't know a dime. Then I put myself through an associate degree and a bachelor's degree. So I paid for really 4 education myself, but it come from Kyle just saying that day. I thought, well, that's true. I don't want to be in debt, and I don't want them to be in debt. Right or wrong, some people think that they should, but Kyle was a real mentor when it come to little things like that. And when you sit and look at all the firemen, coming along out of school and right in here, you learn so much more than just being a firefighter. A lot of these guys were like your dad to you. I mean, they weren't as old as your dad, but they taught you. Your brother, Raymond. Raymond taught me that I could do anything I wanted to do. He told me you can be anything and you can do anything you want to do. And so I did. I'd try anything until one day I went home and I had problems with my commodes and sinks stopping up, and I didn't know nothing about plumbing, but Raymond told me I could do anything I wanted to do. And so I didn't know, but I didn't know you couldn't take the cap off cast iron out there. I was out there beating that cast iron and it was welding, and I tore it all to pieces, and I had to call a plumber, and it was more work than just cleaning it out because I tore up the cast iron. So I remember June telling Raymond, because Raymond was my captain out there at 9 when I was out there at 9. She told me, said, Raymond, don't you ever tell him anymore that he can do anything that he wants to do, because he's tore up everything he's touched here lately. So, but there was people like that, and I sat and looked, and I thought about that question a lot, about all these people that J.E. McCarter, I mean, even though I was his officer, taught me so much more when I'd answer calls with him and talk with him, and Woody Parrish and J.C. Barham. I mean, I had people out there that made me look good because of what they were doing and things that they were familiar with, and I would learn. And so I was better the next time where I went to somebody that wasn't as sharp as they were. And so they taught me so much. And I look at Johnny Teeters. Johnny taught me so much. Sometimes it was hard. Sometimes there's things I didn't want to hear. But he was a mentor. He told me and showed me how to do. And I sit and look at just so many. I mean, I was very fortunate in my career. Chief Hare, Chief Noonan, even in his own way, being an older, sometimes we try to get so ahead because we want to be so advanced, but it goes back to what you say about retirees visiting. He had so much common sense and things that he knew and done. And so when I look at them, Chief Russell, Chief Hare, I remember when I made driver, they come to me, called me in the office over at 7, because one was assistant chief and one was a battalion chief, and they said, I think they're getting ready to move you to driver out truck 3. Said, you don't have to take it if you don't want to. Said, you can stay here. Said, you're driving more here than you're going to drive out there on truck 3. And I said, well, I appreciate that, Chief, but I really want the responsibility of being a driver. Well, after I'd been out there about a year, I realized what they're saying. I think I run 7 calls and drove, but they were teaching you. They were showing you. I mean, sometimes it's not always about promotions and always about money and always about positions. And you learn. Sometimes you learn the hard way. But I had a lot of mentors as I come through. Yeah. Would I do anything different than I've done in my career? I don't think so. I'll be honest with you. I had a great career. I had a lot of disappointments sometimes like anybody else did, but I learned from them disappointments. It probably wouldn't have turned out as well if I hadn't had those disappointments. And you learn how to deal with them, and you learn how to, anybody can go pick one thing or two things. So yeah, I need to change that, or I hate that happened to me. But I think God has a purpose for all of us, and I think His plan, it all happens like it's supposed to happen. If we start trying to mess with it, we'll screw it up. I was proud when I was hired. I was proud to be a fireman. I was proud when I graduated. I was proud in all my promotions and things. My proudest moment out of my whole career, probably. I mean, if you said, what is your proudest moment? Probably my proudest moment was when my son was hired, and when I got to pin the badge on him as a fireman, and when I got to pin it on as a captain or a battalion chief. And I'll tell you another proud moment. I was proud the day I retired, my last day. He worked it out with Dan Laszlo, and I thank Dan all the time for this. I mean, I think about how neat that was. But Dan was a captain at Station 8. And Brad was the captain out at Station 19. And he called me up that night and he says, you're not going into the office tomorrow. He said, I'm picking you up and you can come and spend the day with me. And I said, okay, that's good. He said, you're going to spend your last day with me. You're going to ride with me. And so I went out 19 and I rode with him and his crew that morning, and we eat lunch. And he said, I got another surprise for you. He said, we're going to Station 8 where you first started. And I'm gonna ride captain over there. Dan was getting promoted that day. Dan was going to a meeting, and he said, Dan said I could come and ride, and he'd just wait till we were done and ride with us. And so he went over and we rode. I rode about 4 calls that day with him and riding shotgun, me riding the back, and he had done that. And then they drove me home. They took me home. Dan, all of them took me. And Brad drove me home. That was probably the proudest moment, but at the same time kind of a sad moment, but it was neat. They turned the lights on, let me off, and done. So it was a proud moment, and I'm proud of him for being able to do that for me, and proud of the department. And I had a good career, Larry. I mean, with all its ups and downs, I had good people, always around great people. From the day one. My training class, I think we had 7 guys made chief officer, a bunch of them made captains, a bunch of them didn't want to be. bunch of them were just great friends. I mean,
You had a real great friend named Larry Cochran.
I had a great friend named Larry Cochran, a good working relationship with Larry Cochran and his group. No, but I did. My training class was great people. They've been my friends. A lot of us are really close to this day. I've got good people in the fire department. My wife thinks just as much of them as I do, and they think as much of her. We're family, and I was very fortunate to work with the people, and I hope they enjoyed it working for me. We all have disappointments and things, but I think the saddest was two things I thought about, and certainly one was when Raymond. When I was sitting at the house, we were sitting out by the pool, and got the call. And because Raymond and I had worked together, we'd play basketball and then we would stop and wrestle. We never would know each other. We wouldn't put each other down. We would never make the move so the other one could throw you on the ground until one day. We were standing out in front of Station 9 out there, and something was said, and they said, "This is it. There ain't no playing no more. Somebody's going down. Let's do it." And we were out in front of Friendly Avenue on Station 9, and we did. Both of us were down on the ground. We were wrestling. We were on the ground, and we turned around and looked up, and there come Chief Powell by the going home at 5 o'clock. We just knew we'd probably both going to get fired or reprimanded, but evidently he was looking the other way because nothing ever said. But that's the type, and so and he taught me so much, and where he was just a fun guy, and he was a good officer. And that was a sad day. That was a sad day. And then I was watching. In fact, it was my son's training class. Johnny and I had rode over there. I think the training division was over there when Jackie Beard died. That was a moment that we followed them in to the hospital and actually went in, and that was bad. And same thing happened. I was on Engine 8 with Glenn Johnson. Engine 8, I was the first one on the ladder to get him. It seemed very bad, but when we got him down off the ladder, Glenn Johnson, they took the ladder truck and turned it, and some way or another had gotten in the wires, or the stream had. I don't know. We don't know this day what actually happened, but he got electrocuted, and so I got up there to him and got him down, and I think Terry Hahn was with me then, and got him down and handed him to Charlie Jones. Some of them was down there, and they actually brought him back. But that turned out, that was a bad day. That was a bad, you don't want anybody when you're on a fire scene to get hurt, and but that turned out good. Lynn, they done CPR and brought him back, and so that was a good day. What do I think a successful firefighter is? Wow, a happy firefighter. Now, I think successful is someone that probably has met the goals that he set for himself in the department. He has a passion for what he's doing. He has a joy in his heart and his soul. He cares for the people. He cares for the department. Doesn't mean that he likes everything that's going on, or that but successful. He's successful in his own mind wherever he's at whatever position he's in, whatever assignment he has. You can be successful and not be exactly where you want to be. If you take and make the best out of anything. I said a while ago, when I went to 9 as a driver, we didn't ride a lot of calls. We didn't ride calls, period, a lot of places like they do nowadays. If you had 3 or 4 in one day, you were having a good day. But we were happy. We were successful. We studied. We tried to make sure we were always prepared. So I think a successful firefighter is one that's happy with himself. He's content with who he is, and the department is content with who he is. I don't have to have everybody be a chief officer or a captain or a driver. I need firefighters, and if I've got a good firefighter and he's happy doing that and I'm happy with what he's doing, I'd call him successful. And so I think he's got to have that passion and be content with himself. I don't know what they're going to remember, but I always ran my companies and my position, and my divisions by trying to be honest, fair, and consistent. That's the thing I'd always say. I try to be. Don't mean I always was, but I always tried to be fair, honest, and consistent. So I would like to think that they thought I was fair and consistent. I hope that they feel that that I was somebody that they could talk to. I would like to think that I was a fireman's chief. I think I was open to them to be able to talk to me and to express their concerns, whether it's positive or negative. I'd listen. I was somebody that would listen. I'd like to think they thought I was a good fireground commander, that I looked after them. My concern was not necessarily the building, but them. Certainly I got to look after the property, but I hope that I was always knew my job, that I wasn't just out there in a position, that I was always concerned for them and their careers, and that I was open to whatever it is that they had to say or do, and I've done my job. Wow, what would I like my family to remember? Well, I think the cliche, and it's certainly not a cliche that probably everybody says, is I hope they know that I love them. I hope that they know that I care for them. I hope they know that everything I've done in my life's been for them. My wife has supported me for 51 years, and that don't happen. And it certainly isn't because that I was just the perfect guy. It's because she was the perfect supporter and willing to give and more than take. And so I hope she knows that I love her. I hope my kids know that I love them. I hope my grandkids know that I love them. I want them to know. The department has meant a lot to me. I told you a while ago, I love it. I loved it and I still love it. But my family means a whole lot more. June would tell you sometimes she thought I put the department before my family, but I was doing that for my family. And I love them. I want them to know that. I'm proud of all of them. You know, it's no matter who they are, what they're doing, or where they're at, they're successful in my mind and in my heart. And I just hope I live long enough to see some of these grandkids do something that they want to do. And that's, looking at the years, that might be an impossible thing for some of them, but at least I hope they look back at this and say that Papa loved me. And if there's anything that I would want to say to anybody special as I close this out, would be my wife, June. As I said before in the last question, I've got a great family. I'm proud of every one of them and my grandkids. I love every one of them, but they're a byproduct of June and I and her. If it hadn't been for her, there wouldn't be any of them, not them. And so she has, I told you before, she has supported me, and no matter what I've done, or what I've tried to be. I mean, sometimes that had to be tough. You talk about challenges in the training. There was challenges through the department, disappointments in the department when you're trying to achieve and trying to get positioned and trying to move. And she was there in the good times, and she was there in the bad times. And she knew the people, her friends, as the friends that I had here. And she cares as much for them as I care for them. When I hurt, she hurts. And so I just tell her that I love her and that I appreciate everything she's done over the last 51 years that we've been together as husband and wife. We were together 4 or 5 years before that, dating and living together in the same neighborhood and stuff. And so, but no, I want her to know that I really appreciate everything she has done to support me, and the love that she has given me even when I didn't deserve that love and that support. And so I just appreciate what she's done. I hope that people know what they have when they come on this fire department, and what they can make of it. I mean, we sit here and and we talk about the people, we talk about the times, we talk about pay, we talk about the calls, but it's a family. I've made friends here that last forever. You two are one of them. I think about you guys all the time. I know what you're doing out here now, and it's remarkable of what you two have done in your career and what you're still doing now to try to make a difference. And that's what I want people to know. I mean, it's what you make it. You can set, there's people that has control of your promotions or your salary or your assignments, but they can't take away your joy. They can't take away your ability to make friends and to just enjoy your job. I enjoyed my job every day I come in. June and I talked about that. She said, I can't think of a time that you didn't, there was times that you was having issues or dealing with things, but you never hated going in. You never hated your job. She said, what a blessing that is. God has blessed you. And I would say that to them, that I hope they have the same career that I had, not position-wise, but the ability to, more, I hope they do, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just the ability to build friendships and relationships and that last forever, to look after each other and to do things together and to do things as families. We talked about, I know your kids, you know my kids, we watched them be born, we watched them succeed and watched them grow up. Now we're seeing grandkids. These people, this isn't a job you go to 8 to 5 and walk away. We care about each other. And I was fortunate. I don't, even a person that you would consider that really wasn't really a firefighter you wanted to be around, I never had that. I mean, there was something good in everybody. I've learned more sitting and looking at this film, and I thought I knew people, and I didn't know. You didn't know them as good as I thought I knew them. I wished, you say, would I do anything over again? That probably try to spend more time trying to learn about them than trying to make sure they're doing the job, and that wouldn't be right, because I missed that somewhere. I thought I knew them, and so I would tell these guys out here, try to learn the people. Try to learn what they do, who they are, what makes them tick. I had a great career, good people. I hope that everybody I worked with, I end it with this, I hope everybody that I work with knows I cared about them, and that I know they made me look good.
In closing, the Greensboro Firefighters History Book Committee hopes you have gained a greater insight into the dangers, the challenges, and emotional events that have influenced and shaped the American firefighter.